So instead of the excesses of the late 20th century, which in banking made a collapse, it's the exact equivalent in buildings which are high consumers, extravagant in the individual, but also in the technological sense. They're not designed from the basis of making that marriage of something that is technically elegant and economic, and that's entirely appropriate for the use it's enclosing. And that's a shift, I think. But the reason that I think it's difficult to shift, David, is that the way you get real estate recognition or find tenants is immediately a building that has an image that
spectacular.
Yes, people know it. Secondly, the way you can build a career very frequently is to do a building of novelty, and it's on a front page and it's extraordinary. It's like a couturier that does clothes. You think, who the God's name will wear that?
Right.
But
gets everyone's attention.
Exactly. And so it drives careers. And one more anecdote about that. I remember David Mervish, who had an art gallery, and he had the good fortune to have the wealth to buy the paintings, not to take them from the artist on consignment. At the end of a show, there were one or two paintings that used to not be sold, and David would take that into his collection. They were the paintings that were least recognizable by the artist, because the artist struggling with something new. The ones that the non-cognoscenti would buy were the ones that were recognizable as that painter's. And so I think very often the fact that it cramps creativity when you have to have a label that's recognizable. That it's a repetition of something that's easy, and people can say, well, I've got one of those. And I think it's a treadmill for some architects who are too easily recognizable because somebody wants one of those.
And with Frank Gehry, I think he's done a marvelous job with the Art Gallery of Ontario, but again, the work has since Bilbao has increasingly looked the same.
Well,
because his clients probably are saying, you know, whether it's the Rock and Roll Museum or whether it's the Experience project in Seattle, you know, they're wanting the same amazing titanium computer-generated shapes that computers now enable you to do. But unfortunately, every time I see one, I know right away it's told its whole story. So that's what they say about cheap perfume. It tells its whole story right away, and there's nothing to learn later. You know, so you can look at it once, and that's pretty much all you need. And cathedrals, as you were mentioning, I can never walk by St. James Cathedral here without having to look at it all over again and discover new things. Even though I've looked at it now 200 times and been through it about 100 times, I'm always seeing something new. And again, a lot of it just has to do with how did they build this. Never mind what were they intending.
It has a durability. It has an authenticity. But I think I have a different problem with Frank. Frank Gehry is a hugely talented architect. He has a tectonic ability that's extraordinary. The problem for me is different with Frank. He admits that he's really an artist and a sculptor. And so, because he is so good, it's beguiling and it leads people astray. And it's not the way you build a school of architecture. Because anybody else will be, because it is so artistically dependent and doesn't come from an innate discipline of the kind I've been talking about. Everybody else will be who goes in that line will be a second-rate Gehry.
Right. As Mies van der Rohe, there was just
be a second-rate because it is so artistically determinate and doesn't have. But you could get many cathedrals built upon that principle because it was a transferable principle, and you could then express it differently depending upon climate and circumstance and particularity in terms of the culture or the local materials. That's not true of a Gehry. There's a second problem I have with it, and that is that it's too easy because of computer-generated shapes and because of the ability to use those kinds of expensive materials. You can do anything. It's a poor philosophy. Because you've got the atomic bomb to be extreme doesn't mean you've got to use it. So how do you put these things to good effect? And I think that's the fundamental difference in my view, is that we need to build a school on which we can build, and there is a school architecture in Toronto. I think the Toronto architects are exceptionally skilled. I think their toughest competition often in the rest of the world are like Canadians. And they understand, I think, that elegance and authenticity is more durable than novelty and spectacularity.
I hope someone's writing that down. Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. I mentioned earlier in my comments that when you started your practice in 1975, which was 34 years ago, Toronto was a boomtown, and it seemed that we were in a hurry to tear it again, start over again. Build a world-class city, and world-class.
As soon as you say you're world-class, you know that you're not.
You know you're in bad company. As soon as someone says this is going to be world-class, you know, reach for your wallet for one thing, and then hightail it out of there. I don't know, we wanted to build another Manhattan or something. We wanted, you know, blocks and blocks of skyscrapers or something.
And to be a second-class Manhattan.
Right, we're never going to be Manhattan.
No.
What we have to do is become the best Toronto we can be.
Exactly.